Good afternoon. I am Pete, also known as Risk for Rewards, or over on Twitter known as @Risk for Rewards. Currently got around 20,000 followers over there and about 1,600 here on YouTube. Been a little quiet the last few weeks, just trying to get prepped, ready for Royal Ascot. A lot of content writing, a lot of stuff, and obviously a lot of information, which is starting to get fired around through like the likes of Nick Luck, etc. So if you're looking to find information out, you need to be pretty quick to the game. Currently with Royal Ascot on the horizon. Much like Cheltenham, big meeting, very exciting. The bonuses, we've actually got really nice weather currently for it. It's looking like it's going to be red hot, and that's the difference with the flat. I think the jumps is brilliant. Obviously, no question about it. Jumps is king, but obviously we're all watching it sat at home in the freezing cold and not too worried. We go out just because the diehards of the racing. Whereas over at Royal Ascot, I went last year and it was absolutely brilliant. Went on the Tuesday. Obviously, Baaeed won, then Caribus won, Nature Strip won, and then by then the cocktails were out, the sun was flowing, which was, yeah, the rest was history. Dancing my way home, don't remember getting the train or anything. So, yeah, it was brilliant. It's just more about the fun side of things. But at the same time, obviously, it's business as normal. We want to find some winners. So, I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible because I know I talk too much because I go into too much detail. There is going to be content out throughout Royal Ascot through the 5 days. But I'm trying to keep less content, as in more condensed, because I don't have the opportunity. I'm going to be doing it every day, but it's the fact is you're only getting declarations 48 hours for horses that have ran once or twice in their life. So I want to spend more time trying to look for selections rather than putting masses of content out. So there might well end up that I do a video every evening or for 2 days at a time to try and get as much as possible. This is going to be my early thoughts video, and then next week, once we start getting entries through, jockey bookings, etc., I'll then go into a bit more depth and then obviously go widespread with what we know then, and then I'll do more and more videos, and then the written content will come out with all the stats and stuff closer to the time. I have got plenty of selections. The Discord have already got all of those, so if you want them right now, you'll have to join the Discord. I'm not here to sell it to you in any sort of way possible, because if you wanted to be in it, you'd probably be in it by now anyway. But my selections will be available. I'm going to run through a load of content today for Royal Ascot. So if you can put two and two together, you're probably going to know who I've picked for the races so far. But quick fire through. We're going to go straight to Saturday. It's a quieter meeting, but I have picked out four. Three I really like, and one is a handicap, so it's just a little bit of a bigger price, but his record's too good to ignore. So the 150 at Haydock. So I've had to write a few things down just because it's difficult to remember when there's so many horses. It's not about the field. It's not about everything else. It's just about Mr. Wagyu's form this time of year. It's not going to be any given secret. If you listen to anyone, if you look at content creators, if you look at tipsters, anything on Saturday, they're going to be talking about this horse just because it's fairly obvious. June, July onwards, it's his time of year. I'm just going to read some quick stats. He obviously raced at Epsom last week. He was in the heat of the fire, ran a brilliant race. And he was up there, and if you stopped the race half a furlong before, he would have won that race. But he didn't. But he lost, as the old saying says. And my worst, I really hate the old saying, is he lost little in defeat. As a handicapper, you lose little in defeat, providing you don't go up on your mark. And he has not gone up on his mark. He's fairly well drawn in 11. I look at stall 11, and I did write down. Our last five have been drawn 6 or above, so he's not drawn low, so that shouldn't be any issue to him. Obviously, the threat is All the King's Men because it's got Ryan Moore on board. But again, as I said last week, All the King's Men doesn't look like he's doing anything fast, does he? He's not progressing. He's just consistent, second, third. But Mr. Wagyu, on the other hand, people will be saying, obviously, All the King's Men, the other joint favourite, ran last week. Mr. Wagyu is currently priced at 9-2, for those wondering. You can get 5 places each way, etc. Small profit, obviously, small loss if he loses, but if he wins, you're laughing. So just a couple of quick fire stats. His form at Haydock, first, 10th. Which is important. Course form's always important on the flat. The big thing with the 10th was it was on like heavy ground. Everyone knows at Haydock how awful it gets there. The 2 first places were both on better ground, so that's no negative whatsoever. Positive for him there. Just going to run through a few dates. So 2018, 7th and 13th of June, back-to-back wins. June. Then 2022. 4th and 16th of July. So look, these are really small spaces. A lot of the time you don't want a horse backing up. This horse loves anything with the sun on his back, June onwards, better ground and backing up quickly. So as you've seen there, 7th and 13th of June in 2018, so that's a 5-day gap. 4th and 16th of July in 2022, so that's a 12-day gap. And then we come to 2021, so obviously that was last year. 2021, He went on the 3rd of June, the 7th of June, and the 12th of June. He ran 3 races then. What were the results? Win, win, win. These aren't small fields either. He's not winning like in a 4-field race. He's winning in big field, handicaps, exactly what it is today. If anything, I think there's, how many runners? I think there's only 13 runners. So it's not like he's in a massive hand. 13 runners, each way 5 places. Normally you'd be saying, yeah, but he could bomb. Because you look at some of his form and it's like 8th, 10th, 15th, and yeah, of course he could. But at the end of the day, you're going with this is his time of year. This is when you want to be catching him. These form figures so far that you've got this year, you've got a 10th of 11th, 8th of 10, 7th of 21st, 7th of 21. So you're thinking, oh, okay, they're not very good form. But you look it through, and I mean, the 10th 11, obviously, that's first run back, that's not great. But you look through 5 3/4 lengths beaten by Hyperfocus, so he's not getting beaten out of the clouds. And then last time at York, he was only beaten 3 lengths by Bielsa, even though he finished 7th. And then last week, a length and a quarter. A length and a quarter he finished. Apologies. 2 seconds. Yeah, so Mr. Wagyu is firing. So to put it quite simply, he's a horse that you want to have on your radar. And at 9 to 2 looks more than fair. And obviously, if you're getting each way 5 places in a run of 13 races, 13 horses, obviously he's only got to come in the first 5 off 13. So you got plenty in your favour, in my opinion. If he places, small loss, but at the end of the day, it's what it is. Right, then on to a little bit more of the exciting sort of horses, and we go across to the Beverley Hillary Needler. Again, this isn't going to take much imagination. Midnight Affair went into everyone's notebook on debut when finishing behind Soprano. Soprano I really like, strong chance in the Albany. The George Bowie yard knew what they had. It was one of his horses to follow. There was plenty of positive vibes about that horse, and the horse did bolt up very easily, to be fair. But would she have bolted up if Midnight Affair had been a little bit more organised, a little bit more streetwise, experienced? Not quite so sure. If they met again, it'd be quite an interesting race. George Bowie said Soprano's going to the Albany, so the 6 furlong race at Royal Ascot. Midnight Affair comes here. Was entered up during the week. A few mentioned maybe it was because Danny Tudhope couldn't ride that they've held her for here, or this may have just been a better suit. Fahy has won this race in the past, but again, it's leaving very little to imagination when I look through the form. The 3rd has been beaten since at short price odds, but we know how good Soprano looked. The times were good. Everything about the race is marked her out, and obviously she's got the highest RPR in here. She is the favourite. Obviously 5 to 4 is not giving much away, and it is a good race. There's not like, as in, we're not looking at a bunch of or a bunch of trees, shall we say. A lot of these have achieved at least a 70 to 75 minimum. Like you're looking at 76, 79. Obviously Ziggy's Phoenix is a 2-time winner. And went across and finished 4th over in France at Chantilly in I think that's a Group 2. Just check that. No, sorry, in a listed race. So these aren't no hopers, but at the same time, Fahy's starting to get his 2-year-olds rolling now. Had a really nice winner last week as well. That we'll come on to in a minute. But yeah, Midnight Affair, obviously 2 options. You could go to, if she wins here, the reason I'm pointing this one out, and I've backed it myself, is because it's a big pointer to Royal Ascot. If they decide to roll the dice in 10 days time with Connections, who obviously won last year with Dramatised in the same colours, they could go to the Queen Mary. It's currently priced at 16 to 1 for the Queen Mary, currently around 12 to 1 for the Albany. Albany is 6 furlongs, Queen Mary is 5. The fact she's entered in the 5 furlong, you'd like to say that might be the thing. That might be the aim. Obviously, she's got to win today. But if she wins today and absolutely bolts up, then obviously all doors are open for Royal Ascot in 10 days' time. They don't take long to turn these horses around. The other thing as well with Midnight Affair is the fact that I was waiting for Richard Fahy's stable column to come out. He doesn't normally one on Sporting Life for the weekend, and the hope was the fact that he'll say if she wins here, she might go to Bubba. If she wins here, so currently 16 to 1. That would be my Queen Mary. I think she'll go there because that's over 5 furlongs as well. But obviously she's got to win here first. Right then, on to the next quick fire. 3 o'clock. Right, so 3 o'clock. On to the Leicester Piggott Stakes at Haydock. So back to Haydock. I know I've been banging on about Frankie Dettori and John Gosden and fillies and mares, and basically fillies and mares, Aidan O'Brien, John Gosden, look no further. And as we've seen, the Oaks, etc., recently, that's it. And then I come to this race, I see Mimikyu, and I think, yep, that's the selection. And then do a little bit of research, and then suddenly I find myself back in 2 horses, and neither of them are Mimikyu. And now I've got to take on the juggernaut. John Gosden's in red hot form, Fraggy Dettori's in red hot form. But it is what it is. German Raider, very interesting, perhaps overpriced around the 7-1 mark, but I just always find with these German horses, a lot of them are stamina laden, and a lot of them are horses that prefer softer ground. This is going to be rattling quick, even for Haydock. It'll be faster. Yeah, it says good to firm, and you'd hope they won't water after the mishap they had the other week with creating such a rail bias. So the 2 I fell on, the one that I really liked, I do really like, is Madara. Madara, I backed it at 4-1, put it in the group. I think it's about 7-2. It's still around the 3-1 mark currently. And she just looks exciting. It's one of those where you look at the race, and obviously Mimikyu and Time Lock have both raced recently. And well, actually, Time Lock's had probably, what's that, 4 or 5 weeks off. Sorry, Time Lock's had 5 weeks off. It's Mimikyu that races repeat quickly. But Madara, she just looked so impressive. She won by 13 lengths at Kempton. The form in behind is no great shakes. But she is, if I go to my tracker, apologies, 2 seconds. My tracker, very fast finishing time, great sectionals, good finishing speed, full sisters to bend battle, won easily, eased down. She dropped under the 12-second furlong markers. And so she just looked the horse of serious potential and was destined for much bigger things. Obviously has to handle the faster ground, with her form coming so far, both on the all-weather at Chelmsford and Kempton, and obviously good to soft at Yarmouth. But there's nothing about her that doesn't scream that she'll have any sort of issues with this ground. So she was a bet for me, and as usual, I like to Dutch 2 horses to minimise risk and try and increase profit. By putting 2 horses, if they're 3-1 or bigger, then you get even money. I backed Madara at 4-1, Time Lock at 3-1, and I put the same stake on them just because then Madara was the one I fancied more, but I'll get more out of that profit-wise because obviously she was a point bigger. So the other one that I really liked was Time Lock. I'm going to go into Mimikyu first, just because they both into their form interlinks. So Mimikyu beat Time Lock. I think Mimikyu beat Time Lock twice. No, Mimikyu beat Time Lock last year on the 8th of June 2022. But since then, Mimikyu finished behind Time Lock in a race where she ran no race, in fairness, behind Hascoy at York in 2022. So in June, Mimikyu beat Time Lock, but I look at the form there, and Time Lock was giving away £6, and it was a neck for the defeat. And there wasn't a lot in it. Mimikyu did look like the better horse on the day, but Time Lock was carrying £6 extra. They pulled 10 lengths clear of the third. They then both went to York in August, and Mimikyu went off 100 to 30. Time Lock went off 6-1. Mimikyu ran, just blew her head off, if that makes sense. Was not fit with the hood. Time Lock finished the next second to Hascoy, so we know Hascoy's a decent horse in herself. Mimikyu's returned, and she was wearing the hood again. She looked all over the winner, but she was beaten. She came to win the race, and she was just out-battled by a Ralph Beckett horse in River of Stars. So I'd say she was very weak on the day. Like, she went from something like 2-1 all the way out to like 4-1, and then I think she went off about 3-1 on the day. She did have the hood on there. She didn't race overly free at all. She ran a race, and I think she probably ran better than they expected. I'd imagine she'll come on leaps and bounds for the second run. However, now when I come here and I look at the form, and Time Lock was obviously giving away the weight before, and now Time Lock's getting £5 from Mimikyu. So if I check this, I think it's an £11 swing. 9, 5, 8, 13, £6, and is now getting £5, £11 swing. So if you go on the race where they both ran their races and there's a neck between them, Time Lock's now got £11 in hand, as in £11 in the fact that she was given weight, she's now getting weight because Mimikyu's got the penalty. The other thing of very strong interest, which I don't know if it's going to be positive or negative for Mimikyu, that put me off, was they're removing the hood. She's been very free in the past. Maybe removing the hood will work. It's also strange that Gosden's backing her up so quick. She only ran at York on the 27th of May, and then she comes here straight away. The difference with Time Lock, so going across the Time Lock's form, Time Lock was very consistent, but Time Lock's run at Goodwood, very similar to Mimikyu in the fact that she came there to win the race, but she come there on the bridle, hit the front, but just looked like got tired, and then just got beaten by Luisa Casati close home. Wasn't a bad run, but I'd expect a lot more from Time Lock in the finishing effort tomorrow. So I've took Time Lock as well, just because I like to have the other one on the side. Ryan Moore's in red hot form. Ralph Beckett, Harry and Roger Charlton are in good form. So it's Madara and Time Lock for me. If you can get 3-1 the pair, then winner. Obviously, I've got 4-1 and 3-1. But again, that's just my own selection. And then finally on to 3:15. This one is what you call a very, very trappy race. You've got Room Service, Fustalandia, Bombay Bazaar and Cuban Slide, of which, bar Fustalandia, the other three are all coming here with victories to their name. A bonus for Fustalandia is that obviously carries £4 less. All of them have their chances. They've all got victories to their name, and they're all high RPR victories as well. And you look at the form's not anything spectacular for any of them, but Richard Fahey's 2-year-olds are getting rolling now, as I just said. So Bombay Bazaar is respected. Cuban Slide's the current favourite, but I'm not going to go into all of the different form lines. The horse that stood out to me was Fustalandia. The reason he stood out so much was because he was very, very weak on debut. It was double figures, ended up going off 8-1, but travelled like an absolute good thing. And this was only 30th of May, so this was last week. Travelled like an absolute good thing over the 6 furlongs at Leicester. Went straight past the Godolphin horse, Impressive Act, for Charlie Appleby, who had good form previously, when finishing second behind Cuban Thunder at York on debut. I mean, Charlie Appleby's, as mentioned before, I haven't mentioned it, but a lot of people have seen it, not in very good form at all, so you have to take it with a pinch of salt. But look, the winner all over. And then this golden mind of Richard Fahey's, who went straight in the notebook and is now going to the Chesham, just looked an absolute rocket once got going. Was so slow, right? Half brother to Perfect Power, but looked nothing like Perfect Power, as in the first part of the race was a complete no-show, but once asked the question and got going and pushed along, just found, and could be a big player at Ascot, especially with no real standout in the Chesham. You just worry about the Chesham, but you just worry about that early stage of the race. Picked up Fustalandia on the line to win by a neck, but Fustalandia wasn't given the hardest of rides by Kevin Stott. Was ridden out, don't get me wrong, but at the same time now comes here without the penalty, has that experience. Richard Hannon, we know, loves his 2-year-old sprinters and is turned out quick. I'd imagine that the aim here is that if Fustalandia can get a win on the board, they would see it as an Ascot horse. If they can't beat without the penalty, so getting £4 from the 3 previous winners, then maybe they're not an Ascot horse. And obviously with the Connections Ammo Racing, we know that they love to target those first couple of races in this time of year. Obviously it is a wide open race. I'm not standing here and telling you it's an absolute certainty, but they're 3-1 the field, so I thought 3-1 was more than fair. So, quick summary of those 4. You've got Mr. Wagyu, 9-2 each way, 5 places. Midnight Affair, 5-4, and hopefully the Queen Mary, 16-1. But again, hopefully Richard Fahey's stable tour will point that out. And then 3 o'clock over to Madara's the main fancy, but I've split them between Madara and Time Lock, who at the moment I can see are both 3-1. And then 3:15 finally, Fustalandia at 3-1. So 4 selections for Saturday. I don't want to go crazy because obviously Royal Ascot's around the corner. I won't be writing a load of in-depth analysis for tomorrow because I'm going to be writing so much for a Royal Ascot. It's not that I haven't looked at them and looked properly on all of these selections. It's the fact that we've got so much coming up. So right then, if you are a fast forwarder and you're just here for the Royal Ascot preview, welcome. Here comes the Royal Ascot preview. So these are just my early thoughts. I'm not going to label everything out for you because it's not fair on the people in the Discord group, because obviously they've paid to get the selections firsthand. But I am going to tell you obviously my thoughts, and if you can put 2 and 2 together, then obviously you're going to get what you want out of this video. So I'm going to focus on the odds checker priced up races, and obviously mainly the group ones. First up, Queen Anne. Obviously won by the likes of the horses like Palace Pier. Did Palace Pier win it? Baid won it last year. I think Palace Pier won it the year before. This is obviously it is the mile. Let me actually get the card up. It's no good just having prices, is there? Where is it? Right, Queen Anne Stakes. Apologies, poor prep. So Queen Anne Stakes. Yes, I was correct. Poor prep, but I knew it. Baid and Palace Pier won this the last 2 years. This is the ultimate mile in test. Straight mile. Bullet straight out like you go. I was there to watch Baid. It's a very impressive race to watch. Downside of this is a bit like our 2 mile divisions at times over on the National Hunt front, is the fact that it's fairly weak. I have looked at stats, but I'm not going to go into stats today. But you look through this, and the main horse that I was taking out of this as the bigger prices I thought was Maljoom. Maljoom has been ruled out yesterday, so therefore it falls on the front end of the market. Mutasabek, obviously, Chindit, and Jadumi, and was Cash in that race? I don't think so. All have work to do to turn the form around with Modern Games. So Modern Games sets a standard. Obviously 7-4 favourite, 2-1 in places. Achieved an RPR last time of 1-2-4. Won the Lockinge very well. Baid won that before, and I think Palace Pier won that the year before as well, before coming here and following up. It's a great trial. It falls perfectly in the map. And the thing for Modern Games, the most important thing is he's got his rattling fast ground. He wants good to firm, 8 furlongs, straight track will suit him. He's got the best piece of form with the Lockinge, but he's also got a very strong piece of form here at Ascot when finishing second to Bayside Boy. On that day, Inspiral missed a break completely and she just tailed home pretty much. It was on softer ground. Bayside Boy's obviously retired, so there's no issue with Modern Games obviously meeting that rival, but has got the beating of plenty of these. So, worthy favourite. The other one that obviously of plenty of interest is Inspiral. Inspiral, she's currently around 5-2 to 3-1. I think as soon as she's confirmed, I think you can get with William Hill at the moment. They're the only ones that go non-runner, no bet. So you've just got to be careful when you're backing these horses. But Inspiral is the other one that completely sets the standard. You look at her numbers: 1-2-3 RPR at Ascot last year. With her weight allowance, that would win probably all of. Would I say all of them? Okay, Baid won with a 1-3-1 RPR last year, but with her weight allowance, apart from Baid, she would have won every single run-in. So if you give her the 1-2-3 and then add +3, so 1-2-6, she'd have won all the other run-ins. Obviously, she wouldn't have beat Baid. And you'd imagine if she was in the Lockinge, where Modern Games was, she would have been a shorter price than Modern Games. I've gone back and forth with Inspiral, but I went through all her form. I thought she was very tricky and she's very hard to trust and all that sort of thing. Then when I looked through, bar her 1-7 flop, where she was a complete no-show at Newmarket, like she's very, very consistent. I looked back through the Ascot run at the end of the season where she finished 6th of 9, but she completely missed the break. The race was gone, so it's very difficult to put anything on that. She was unreal and one of the scenes of the whole of Royal Ascot last year when she came here fresh. And she absolutely blew the field to bits. Frankie gave her a pretty awful ride, and he knows he did. And he even said straight after, he said she got me out of trouble big time. But she came here after a 252 day break. She came here fresh, and she is very much like Modern Games. She wants rattling fast ground. Well, not necessarily actually. She does go on good soft, but she enjoys fast ground. She loves Ascot. 8 furlongs, straight mile, round the bend, no issue. Because obviously she then went across and she won the Jack Lamawa just like Palace Pier did. Beating Light Infantry, who obviously I put for the Lockinge, so I'll be fuming if he comes back and somehow wins this race. Beat Light Infantry that day, which you'd say, oh, the form's not that great. But in third, in behind half a length, was Erevan. So Erevan, obviously, who's looking at reopposing here and is currently around 8-1, has been the market mover this week. So I think the front two are going to be very tough to beat in this. The market tells you that. The only concern you've got with Modern Games is how Appleby's form picks up in the next 10 days. 10 days is a long time in racing, especially in flat racing, but he really would want to see. He's got some short prices going across to America this week, and he'll want to see some improvement, because even last night, like they're just not finishing their races. I think you've got a massive asset in your favour until we see the change, that if you're backing a horse that you really like and it's against an Appleby horse, the market isn't putting into the fact the stable form and they just aren't finishing their races. It's so unlike him. There's a whole column, if you want to read it, on Sporting Life about his when he was last in this sort of form, and he is a phenomenal trainer, but for whatever reason they're just not finishing their races currently. So yeah, the other one obviously as well, looking at Appleby, is you've got in there 8-1, you've got Native Trail, but I can't be having Native Trail personally, because I just think if you're a horse that obviously finishes second in the 2,000 guineas and then first in the Irish 2,000 guineas, he then started stepping up to 10 furlongs. So that says to me that they weren't, and obviously they were okay runs, just not fantastic. Half a length for Verdini's a good run in the Coral Eclipse, but then beaten 14 lengths by Baid. It just says to me they weren't sure he was an out-and-out miler, and then obviously to get beaten by Mutasabek, that's not great form. Right, on to the King's Stand. So the King's Stand, right, this is a tough race. What is with my speaking today? Tough race to weigh up. Mainly because all the if you want any information over that, I am plugging different sources at the moment, but it's important. I'm a content creator. I'm here to just give selections, but I am here to just give information and try and help people out who are short on time. Like, I'd love to be able to watch what I'm doing without me having to put any effort into it. If you listen to Nick Luck, he's got daily podcasts. He's talking to a lot of these international raiders. So this week he was talking to the connections of Kulin and Gata and Cannonball, and he was chatting to them, and they were like, "Yep, they're all on the plane." Well, this was a few days ago. They will be on the plane today, so they, I presume, have got on the plane and they will be here. So Coolangatta had a bit of a suspect workout apparently just before coming here, but if you forget about the fact that they made any work, beat I Wish I Win. And that's solid form out there. That's very good Australian form. Is a young and up and coming horse rather than the likes of Nature Strip, who come in with an absolute rocking profile. Coolangatta doesn't come in with a rocking profile, but at the same time did beat Nature Strip. So Coolangatta beat Nature Strip last time out 2.5 lengths. So if you want to take that on face value, I don't personally. I don't think that's the way it works here. But at the same time, is no back number, if that makes sense. So there is going to be lots of in between. If you're strong on one of the English raiders, then I wouldn't put you off taking the price, because we don't know who's going to turn up, who will definitely run, and how the price will affect. But I'm just going to go into, so Marshman, I think, had his chance, and I think he's not regressive. I just don't think I think he's been slightly found out that he is about a 110 sort of RPR sort of horse. We'll have his chance here, but he's not one I want to be getting into. I will look at the bigger price runners close to the time, but I want to know. I don't want to go through every single runner when I don't know. Dramatised was electric here last year, obviously winning the Queen Mary Stakes. Very, very impressive. So you know she's going to love the track. Very impressive when beating Equilateral. The only concern with Dramatisers was she favoured massively by the draw bias that her and Little Big Bear had race after race. William Buick would not give up that rail for love nor money. He was willing to just sacrifice her chance completely rather than move off the rail, and that may have won her the race. Beating the likes of Equilateral doesn't win you a Group 1 like this, but it does set you on a good step up the trip, like the opposite of the way Marshman, in my opinion. She's going places, and she is going to get an allowance. She's getting £6, so she doesn't need to run to like the likes of a 120 or 125 because she's getting a £6 allowance. So you look last year, say like the Highfield Princess, say if she ran to a 125 or something like that, then obviously Dramatised would only need to improve £6 to go from a 113 to 119. I do think she was slightly flattered, and I do think 5 to 1, 6 to 1 is fair rather than being exceptional at the moment. Highfield Princess is by far the one to beat, in my opinion. She's got Ascot form. If you stop the clock, I know you looked last year, and obviously she ran in it would be called the Diamond Jubilee Stakes, which is the Saturday race, the 6 furlong at Royal Ascot last year. She finished 1.5 lengths behind Naval Crown. But if you stop that race around the five furlong mark, she's in the lead, and she battled and battled and battled, and that was her only start in her upward trajectory. She then after that went on to win 3 Group 1s in a row. Like you just don't get that sort of form unless you're exceptional. Like even horses, like one of my favourite sprinters was Soul Power, and like sometimes he could win 2 or 3, say 2 Group 1s in a row, and then he might finish 8th or 9th. Whereas you look at her and she is so consistent, like 6th first, 4th second, and her 4th obviously was at Keeneland, where obviously you're troubled for luck. They've decided she's a 5 furlong horse. She might end up in the 6 furlong race if she was to win this, and she obviously gets £3 from the Colts. So she is going to take some pegging. I do think 3 to 1. Will that price go down? I don't know. Last year I think Nature Strip went off about 9 to 4, but that's because there was so much money for the Wesley Ward horse. If some of these Australian sprinters and American sprinters come over and they're not subject to that great a report in the next week or so, she should get clipped. She could get clipped into 5 to 2. Same time, she could go off 4 to 1 because it's an incredibly competitive race. She sets a brilliant standard, and I think she's the top of your shortlist. And then you've just got to go through and start picking off like horses like say Twilight Cools or Royal Acclaim, and see who you want to give a chance to. Look at the draw biases, but she sets a lofty standard. Right, St James's Palace Stakes. So this one's interesting. If anyone who follows me on Twitter will see that I've been beating the drum. The horse I actually wanted to back was Alrifa, 14 to 1. Isn't going here according to Joseph O'Brien. It's still potential, but it's not likely to go there. Royal Scotsman has blotted his copybook since a good third in the 2000 Guineas. it's a horse that's always got plenty of excuses, but is a brilliant horse. But I just don't know what his trip is, and I'm not sure they do. Maybe 7 furlongs will suit. Isaac Shelby, for me personally, looks a 7 furlong horse, or I don't know what sort of mile trip it would be. Like, looks the winner everywhere. Maybe it was a soft ground at Longchamp that caught him out rather than the trip, but absolutely brilliant in a great time in the Greenham Stakes. Can't knock that at all. But then obviously second to Mahaba Yasanafi, who I think came third on the weekend in the big race with Big Rock. Yep, correct. So third behind Ace Impact and Big Rock. So that's great form. Obviously losing only by a short neck to that horse. But Isaac Shelby, I'm not sure. Is he definitely going to see out the mile? Because this isn't going to be like a sharp. It's a bit like a 2,000 guineas mile in the fact that there's going to be plenty. They'll sweep around that bend, and when they come onto the home straight, you are going to need to stay. That is a long Ascot straight, 2 or 3 furlongs. I know if you get boxed in, it's even worse. People are like, how have you not got out with that long a straight? But it's a long straight to be staying. So I'm not writing him off completely. He might be a selection close to the time, but I just think there's others that are more interesting. Step forward, Mostab Shear, who again we don't know is definitely going here. I've been beating the drum. It was 10-1, then it was 7-1 non-runner no bet William Hill, and then it's getting shorter and shorter. Now he's close to 5-1, 6-1. The reason I knew so strongly was because I put a Katab and New Business against him. I thought you're carrying a £6 penalty. You were very average on return, and I thought you're just not going to be as good as it. And absolutely blew the race to bits in the Darley Novice Stakes at York. Won by 5 lengths to Ziryab. You go to Ziryab. Ziryab's just bolted up 2 lengths by a good Appleby horse. Again, suspect form. New Business finished 7 1/4 lengths behind. Has just beaten Orchard Bloom 1.5 lengths from the front in June and at Kempton. So that's form franked. I know it's a lot lower level. This is a Group 1, but at the end of the day, when you're looking at a 7-1, 10-1 shot, you have to find horses like that. So I think Mostab Shear, if turns up, and I think they kind of have to turn up now because the form's going that way. That if Ziryab is obviously looking at an Ascot horse who finished 5 lengths behind him, then surely he could be one. And you have to remember, I know obviously there's huge Group 1 standard I'm about to get to at the front end of the market, but the other flip coin of that is like the likes of Baid and stuff. He was winning lower levels, and then he just got dropped into a Group 1 and beat Palace Pier. So it's not out of the ordinary. And also the front market have got to run their race again. So whereas Mostab Shear's only had 3 runs, which brings me on to Cicero's Gift. Cicero's Gift is very similar to Mostab Shear, and they've confirmed this is going to be the race. However, this is very, very short now. 10-1 into 3-1 in places. 4-1. I know people are putting them up and stuff, but still, like you look at the Colesai form lines, and Colesai's been beaten twice since, finishing third behind Regal Reality. That's not phenomenal form. So I don't think there's a lot between. You look at the RPRs. I don't think there's a lot between Cicero's Gift and Mostab Shear, but Cicero's Gift's in around 3-1, just in behind Paddington. So that must be showing plenty of form at home. Like I think Cicero's Gift could, if you wanted to take the front end and you wanted the sexy unexposed horses, those two could be played. But Cicero's Gift not at 5-2, 3-1. That is just a wrong price. That's why I think Mostab Shear's price is holding, because they haven't confirmed. Like Paddington's a very interesting horse. Like Paddington normally, like a lot of people, like you've been looking at this, and why is Paddington not 7-4, 2-1? He seems to be always underrated, but I do think that race was round to suit in what was, in my opinion, a very weak Irish 2,000 guineas. It was weak for a number of reasons. One is because the favourite, Royal Scotsman, just did not run his race at all. The other, obviously, High Royal converted his form across and was fair. But you take that out, and Aidan O'Brien's finished 1-2. And Aidan O'Brien, don't get me wrong, is on absolutely fire at the moment. But if you start going through all of these horses, like I look at Cairo, like Cairo's form before this, like he'd achieved 101, 106. His 2 runs prior to this in 2023 was a 98 RPR and a 44 RPR. So even on his best, he's achieved about a £10 higher run. High Royals ran very similar to 2,000 guineas, not a lot on it. 1 3/4 behind Chowdene, 2 3/4 behind Paddington. So obviously, I just think he'll have his chance. I don't know whether he's a bet or not a bet at the moment. I think all he's doing is improve. He's now 4 for 4, 4 wins in a row, and you look at it, he's improved 105, 110, 120. So he's improved massive amounts. I just think this form's slightly suspect. But at the same time, Aidan O'Brien horse, who's won his last 4 on the bounce, including Irish 2,000 guineas. It's strange to see him at 3-1. And what's even worse is the fact Cicero's gift's actually shorter in places. So regardless of whether he's flattered, he's got a 2,000 guineas to his belt. And then obviously step forward Chaldine. Chaldine, complete unblemished record, beaten into 5th on debut, unseated the rider with the whole Frankie Dettori issue. Very strange, but you look through all his form, and his form is absolutely rock solid. And obviously he took the 2,000 guineas. 2,000 guineas now, not looking like a good race. The form in behind is not looking great, and obviously Noble Star's been beaten since, but the 2 main horses that failed to run their race, August Rodin and Little Big Bear, have clearly showed that they ran absolutely no race on the day, and 125 to 1 shot second. But at the same time, throw that on the other side of it, it doesn't really matter because he's beaten the likes of Royal Scotsman, Nostrum, Aesop's Fable, Naval Power. Like, he hasn't beaten Yokes, Indestructible. He's beaten good horses in these Group 1s. And in 120, 118 RPR sets a standard. Chaldine's the one to beat, clearly. Handles all sorts of turf, got good ground form. I just think the guineas fell apart and it kind of fell in his lap. So again, the jury's not really out. I'm not really sure what to go with that race. I back Mostabshire personally, and I'll go with there and see where we end up. I'll probably end up backing at least 1 towards the front end of the market, maybe 2. But there's plenty to you're guessing at. Onto the Queen Mary, wide open race at the moment. Like this, I could go for a list of loads that I like. But then people will be like, well, why have you switched from that one to that one? But until you get the fields, because there's only 5 furlongs Queen Mary, 6 furlongs Albany, there is no point going through this. And this is why I said with Royal Ascot, it can't be like Cheltenham, because I'll get the fields 48 hours before. I just don't have the time, so you then have to work out. Beautiful Diamond was impressive this week, and obviously I mentioned Midnight Affair, who runs tomorrow. Duke of Cambridge, not going to touch it yet because there's so much question mark. Like, you've got Innsbruck head of the market. Gosden could turn around and say, yeah, she's going here, but from what we've heard, she's going to the Queen Anne on day 1. So that's already front end. Is Above the Curve going to come across? Change of trip, change of ground to good to firm? Probably not. Jumbly has been backed in from a price-wise gamble, 8s and 5s. Makes complete sense. Obviously, it was a huge money purchase, and maybe this was the plan. Ran a big race last time out. Laurel, Gosden. We know Gosden in the fillies and mares races, but was a complete flop last time out. But maybe that's because she needed it, and Gosden wasn't in the form that he is now. So again, there's no point. You don't want to dive in unless you've got a strong fancy. There's no point who you know is going there. There's no point going in. Royal Hunt Cup, exactly the same. 100 horses in the race. One that's clearly laid out for it at the moment is Astro King. I will quickly dive into this one just because I am keen to display. Brilliant run on comeback, finishing 4th. New connections, gone to Daniel and Claire Kubler. And the reason I want to dive into this is because last year he was beaten off 102. This year it comes off 99. So it's £3 lower. And if you go back and watch his previous run, it was a career best, despite a stable switch. Yeah, so it was a career best, despite going from Stout to Kubler, still at 12 to 1. And if you get a claim, already £3 better off for a 4th 1.5 length defeat from Dark Shift last year in the same race. This is the Royal Hunt Cup I'm talking about. If that name comes up and they say, oh, we've booked claimer, like say you've got like a £6 claimer, £7 claimer, like a Billy the Kid, someone who you know is gonna, like, whether it's £3, £5, £7, on top of that £3, if you had £7, that's £10 well in on last year's run. You came a length and a quarter, and you're coming in off a career best. So I think that's one you will have on I have on my radar. But at the moment, you could be getting 5, 6, 7, 8 places on the day. The horse could still be 8 to 1. So is there any point in backing it in at 10 to 1 currently now? Probably not. Windsor Castle, skip. Norfolk, let's keep it short. Elite status, I did put up a thing on the day for Sandown, apologies. I did put up on the day, before elite status ran, I did say you may want to take the 33 to 1 elite status to win tonight and on the day in Norfolk. I also said that about Blue Storm, it was 50 to 1. Blue Storm obviously didn't win, elite status won, and was so impressive. That was a race that on paper looked a lot of depth. The times come back good, the section was come back good. It was just a way absolutely powered through the race. And I saw afterwards the post race debrief with Carl Burt, and he had a laugh and he said, yeah, at least the Wesley Ward horse will give us a good toe to the final furlong. So, like, when you're joking about that, you've got to be confident in your horse. He's 7-4 now, so I mean, would you want to back it? I mean, if the Norfolk turned into an 8-runner race and he was 7-4, that's fair enough. But what if the Norfolk turned into a 20-runner race like the Coventry? You're just not going to want to. And obviously, the American Rascal comes across, another Wesley Ward horse. The problem is now is that these horses we used to be like, yeah, let's go, and they'd still come second, third, fourth, or whatever, but they're not coming across at, like, say, 8 or 10 to 1 or something, and then being backed in and then going off 3 or 4 to 1, like. And every year he's coming over and he's saying, I've got the best crop I've ever had. I've got the best crop I've ever had. And, like, he has got the horses, like, and I think everyone just pinches on the back of the Lady Aurelia coattails that we're going to see that. And American Rascal could well do that, but you don't know which ones will and which ones won't. So until we've got more information and stuff like that, see how they've travelled, see where they're drawn. Like, I mean, Carl Burke will be sat there thinking, I hope I'm drawn next to American Rascal, because that will set it up perfectly. You just go off, elite status will tow him. So, bottom line is, if you're on at the prices for elite status, we're laughing. And 33-1 is great. If not, you're probably sat in your hands, because you want to know, is River Tuber definitely going Coventry? More than likely. How many runners are going to be in the race? Is there going to be more? So you'll have to wait and see. But I wouldn't listen to everything Wesley Ward says. Prince of Wales Stakes. So one of the races of the week. Anyone who followed me last year will know that my three strongest bets, obviously, it's all very well saying this now, but I did give better prices. Like, it was Baid, Caribus, and in the Prince of Wales was Bay Bridge. Like, I know they all went off very short prices, but I did put them up at much bigger prices. Not much bigger, but stuff like, I think it was about 11-8, 6-4 Baid, and obviously went off about 1-5. But Prince of Wales, I was so hung up on Bay Bridge last year, and obviously, unfortunately, Bay Bridge got beat in this by Son of Rest. I'm going to bring up the form for Bay Bridge. Apologies, 2 seconds. So Bay Bridge obviously got beat by State of Rest, last year, and it was just a perfect ride from the front. State of Rest State of Rest is a very good horse, but it was like the perfect set of some circumstances to get this horse beat, in the fact that Bay Bridge likes cutting the ground, likes to get going, likes to gallop. We didn't know all these things back then. It just looked like a very average ride against a very good ride. It was a painful one, but here we are again, and this is one of my strongest bets of the week. We're back again with the Prince of Wales stake. I'm happy to say it's one of my stronger bets of the week, because I backed it at 6-1, and I put the price up at 6-1 as well. So it's it doesn't matter. Obviously, I don't want to rob people who have paid their money in the Discord and stuff, because the prices have crumbled anyway. A lot of people will be saying you can't back Bay Bridge at that price, and that's fair enough. You don't want to back it at 2-1. You don't know where it's going to go currently price wise. So I'm going to quickly run through these. Emily Upjohn, can't see coming here, especially with the news that Frankie Dettori is going to be riding Desert Crown this morning. Coral Eclipse bound, I'd imagine. I've backed Emily Upjohn at 7-2. I think she's currently around 5-2, 11-4. Wouldn't put anyone off that. My Prospero, good horse. Very good, strong form behind Bay Bridge in the Champion Stakes. Will come on for that run in behind Modern Games. Potentially has more to come. What I would call a solid horse. Bay Bridge. The thing for Bay Bridge is that I like when you have time between his races, and also softer ground, and he's not going to get either of these. He's coming here. This is his third run and fairly fast. Well, obviously he ran on the 28th of May, ran a brilliant race behind Luxembourg, but Luxembourg did him exactly the same way as State Arrested from the front. I think Bay Bridge would suit like something like an Arc, where it's like bottomless ground. They have to push and push and push. So his career RPR was 125. If he runs here, he's obviously going to be a massive player. And obviously it wouldn't be no surprise if he did beat Desert Crown, if Desert Crown isn't what he's cracked up to be. But at the same time, anyone who you speak to knows that they prefer softer conditions. I personally thought that Desert Crown, when connections confirmed Desert Crown going the Prince of Wales and the King George at Ascot, I presume Bay Bridge would then slot into the Eclipse slot, because although he wasn't great in the Eclipse, he was backing up very fast after Royal Ascot. And if you look at his Brigadier Gerard form the year before, although it was over 2 furlongs short, he was phenomenal in that race. And that was a very high number. That was 124. That's only £1 off his career best. So a lot of people have just got onto this whole thing. Oh, it's definitely going to be Bay Bridge and Desert Crown are both going to run and stuff like that. But the connections have not categorically come out from Bay Bridge and said he is definitely running in the Prince of Wales yet. So I would not say that that's a definite. And just because obviously Kingscott's unfortunately been dropped off for Frankie Dettori, obviously Kingscott would, I'd imagine, take the Bay Bridge ride, but that's not to say that he would definitely have a ride in the race. So you're guessing. Adiar, very, very strong chance. Problem is, fast ground, I think he's better with a little bit of cut. Connections have actually come out and said it would be nice to get a Group 1 on his CV over 10 furlongs. So it's not that they're saying that he's I say a Group 1. He hasn't got a Group. Yeah, because he hasn't got a Group 1. He's got it over 12 furlongs, like the Derby trip. So the question would be, is he better over further and is he better with soft ground? Again, I don't know. He's one that I'd have on my shortlist, but I don't know yet whether you'd want to back him again because of stable form. Like they could come to Royal Ascot and just absolutely blitz it, but you don't know that. Luxembourg, to me, looks the state of rest to the likes of Desert Crown and Bay Bridge. Ryan Moore, having ran in last year's race, is going to, I think, in my opinion, go for the state of rest approach here. I think he's going to go off from the front and he's going to try and steal it, much like he did at the Curragh when he beat Bay Bridge. Luxembourg has been a very underrated horse, and he is one that is very in and out. When he's bad, he's bad. When he's good, he's good. How he won the Champion Stakes last year, I will never know. And then, long and behold, he come back and he wins the Tatterstall's Group Gold Cup against very similar horses. So he's a horse that keeps getting underestimated, but he's got numbers that feature of all the same horses in the race. He is a massive danger, in my opinion, to any horse in this race if he can get that easy lead from the front. If they don't pester him and he gets that easy lead, he's going to be tough to peg back. And on that Ascot track, if he gets a quick run, I could just see the state of rest situation, the same as Bay Bridge last year with Ryan Moore in the drive. However, so I'm not writing him off, that's for sure. And then on to Desert Crown. Yeah, I've put him up at the bigger prices. Yeah, I've backed him at the bigger prices. No, I wouldn't be in a rush at the moment to back him at 2-1. I know a lot of people say he shouldn't be that price in the market. He shouldn't be here. He shouldn't be there. Me personally, when I backed him at those prices, I thought he should be around the 3-1 mark. In amongst, probably sat just behind the likes of Luxembourg, but ahead of Adiar. I know he's proved less, but at the same time, he's got more improvement that he could show. He's already matched. He's got a 125 RPR to his name when winning the Epsom Derby, and as seen with Passenger this year, like it is so difficult to be winning that sort of thing off only your third run, and that 125 RPR is higher than any other horse in the race, bar Bay Bridge, and Adiar's run in 2021. So he's got that sort of level of form. I know everyone was disappointed. I was disappointed too that he didn't finish his race when beaten by Hookham, but he still ran to a 122 RPR, which is puts him in the firing line for a race like this. And let's have a look. Last year was won by 124 RPR. Year before that, 119, 126, 129. So you're probably going to be aiming to run anywhere between around a 125 will probably win you this race. So just on numbers purely, his Derby run, those sort of numbers would put him in the firing line for this race. So he is unexposed. He is the horse, and a lot of it is down to connections. Like the way they talk about this, the fact that when they talk about, we know how good Bay Bridge is, and Bay Bridge is ran to 125 RPRs as well. And the fact that they talk about Desert Crown like he's just that level above, but this is his acid test. If you can't win this, you're not going to be an arc horse. You're not going to be unless he improves for the 2 furlongs going back up again. Like a lot of these King George aspirations and stuff, they're going to go out the window. But with the booking of Frankie Dettori, I see very little negatives now, apart from the price. Like I could easily see Frankie Dettori and Ryan Moore are both at incredible strike rates already, let alone the fact that they're the best at Royal Ascot. And I could see him coming down that camber, and if Luxembourg does steal a lead, if Desert Crown's good enough, that's going to suit him down to the ground if Ryan Moore sets rapid fractions. Because if he is as good as he looked in the Derby and he sat there on the bridle, he could end up laughing at him. At the same time, he could end up shoved along out the back and everyone would be saying, well, it was obvious. He was obviously he was brilliant last year. He's an average horse, not a top level. I think he's obviously clearly got the potential to be the next level above. And if he wins this, he'll start getting talked about it for things like the Arc, the King George and stuff. And Michael Stout knows what horses he's got and the levels and stuff, the workforces. He's had so many through his hands. And they've been very bullish on him. So yeah, in short, I like Desert Crown to poor price at the moment. Will it change? Probably, but it's going to be a very fine window. He's getting backed in again now to like 15 to 8 because of the Dettori news. Maybe he'll drift out after Dex, but then as soon as the everyday punter picks up, if you're backing any of Frankie Dettori's rides, they are going to get absolutely hammered every single day. Multiples, accumulators, singles, the whole works. So I think Luxembourg's are very dangerous if given an easy lead from the front. Adiyar, you'd want to see the stable come back into form. Baybridge, I'm not sure runs here. If he does, then assess him then. My Prospero will be disappointing if one of these isn't better than him. Right then, on to the next. What have we got? The Ascot Gold Cup. So again, I can talk about this because my prices have gone. And I have put some of these on Twitter as well. So Eldorov put up at 8 to 1 start of the season for any horses, well, before he even ran. And then Coltrane I added to the selection at 6 to 1. The main reason is for both of those two, without going into too much depth, is the fact that both of them won at the Royal Ascot meeting last year. Both clearly obviously won at much lesser races than an Ascot Gold Cup. But they both have form at the track and they both won at the Royal meeting. And that to me was very, very important. So obviously Coltrane's been there, done that, beaten Trushan. That random race where he lost to Quick Thorn, but has come back and absolutely demolished Trushan and everything else in the race, beating Wise Eagle 4 lengths. Running to levels at 119 RPRs, which is steady enough for this sort of run. Last year, he's ran so many times, Coltrane. So last year, it was a handicap he won, beating Bring on the Night. It's a bit like Cheltenham festival form, and that's what was really important to me. Likes the good ground. I don't see this being an issue going up in trip. Already won at 18 furlongs. Obviously, it's only a further 2 furlongs. And he just looked the level above again. Even though on ratings he wasn't massively above, he looked the level above. And then we switched to Eldorov. David Egan did an interview this week and he was so bullish on him, but obviously he's young, so he's going to be bullish and hopeful. But his form in the St. Leger is rock solid. I know Emily Dickinson was favourite for this race before bombing out last time, but she's got work to do with him anyway, in the fact that she was finished 3 lengths behind. She would have been getting all the weight allowances that day. She was sent off 16 to 1, so not a lot was expected. She has improved, but the improvement that you look through her form, and a lot of her best form, I say a lot of her best form is coming with real cut in the ground, like soft to heavy and heavy. Like, could she bounce back and be a massive player in this? Yeah, she could, but she's only getting £3 or £4 from the field. So at 6-7 to 1, she's not a fantastic price. Haskoy, I think the connections think she's too classy for this. I think I'm not sure you're going to end up seeing Broome. Be disappointing if ends up winning this. I know he's good out in Maidan, but not for me. This Courage Mon Ami, interesting that the Gosdens have decided to roll the dice and send this horse here 3 for 3, unbeaten, very impressive at Goodwood. But it's interesting though that they're talking about this, but they're also talking. So if Courage Mon Ami is running, like, why is it the rumour this morning is that Frankie Dettori is likely to ride Echoes in Rain for Willie Mullins? If he rides Echoes in Rain, I mean, that says a lot about Courage Mon Ami's challenge. Subjectivist is a massively interesting contender. Obviously was brilliant in this when demolishing the field in 2021, beating Princess Zoe, but I'm sure in behind Stradivarius was luckless once more. Very interesting, but has shown levels of form, like obviously third behind Broome and Maidan, and gets his rattling quick ground. Wouldn't want to give him too much lead and stuff, especially with the likes of an Eldorov who enjoys the softer ground. Sorry, 2 seconds. Eldorov who gets behind in his races. So for me, like, I'm not going to go and beat around that. Obviously, I have got better prices, but Eldorov's 4 to 1, Coltrane's 3 to 1. I'd have no issue dutching those two, and obviously it'll pay just over evens. May I add another one close to the time and reduce the profit, but increase my probability of hopefully finding a winner, possibly. But I think the front two, with their Royal Ascot form, they're both up and coming. They're both not proven at the trip, but they've got no consideration, no issues with it. And I think Eldorov ran the best trial, and Coltrane looked the best coming back, whereas the rest have got plenty to prove. Emily Dickinson bombed. Haskoy I don't think will run. Broome was average when finishing behind Eldorov, even though Eldorov had a penalty that race and was having first run. Courage Mon Ami's got to improve, and Subjectivist has got question marks. Right, I'm going to try to speed this up. Ribblesdale, can't talk about yet. Albany, as I said, Sopranos, top of my list. Navassa Islands, top of my list. But I'm not going to go into anything too detailed. Right, so apologies, 2 seconds. Right, Commonwealth Cup, Little Big Bear, bounce back to form, brilliant to see. Obviously, the thing is with that run is obviously without putting, I have put Little Big Bear up at, I think it was 9-1 to win that race and then win here. But at the same time, there was a clear rail bias at Haydock. There's not a lot you can do about that, but at the same time, that was his first run back since a massive issue. He bounced back. He was brilliant. But again, I'm going back to the king of the form. The king of the form is Royal Ascot form. Last year he won at Royal Ascot. They basically said he couldn't be beaten, and he was brilliant. Got the better of Rocket Rodney. Am I going to stand there and say he's a certainty? No, he's not, because I just don't like horses in races like the Commonwealth Cup. There's a luck in running. There's plenty of factors into it. Do I think he's got a strong chance? Yeah, really strong chance. But I could easily see him. He could be 6-4, even money on the day. He could be 5-2. I'm not going to stand here. If you've backed Little Big Bear, whether it's at 4-1, 5-1, 9-1, I think you've got a great chance. I'm not going to go too much into these, but the ones at the top of my list currently are, I still like Al Dassim. Good form over in Meydan. My worry was the fact that he went non-runner. We haven't seen him frank that over here, but he's going to get rattling fast ground just like in Meydan, and I wouldn't write him off. Noble Star, I'll be interested to see whether he goes here or the Jersey. I think he's got a chance if he goes here. Lazoo had good form with the likes of Morge and stuff last year, but I think they're planning on going to one of the big sprints. Shaquille, very interesting, the up and comer, and could end up on the short list. Obviously beaten Desert Cop, but you'd argue, looking back now, obviously the main sculpt he took was Noble Star, but was Noble Star 100% after what we've seen with the Appleby Yard, and also it was very fast after the 2000 Guineas. The main interesting one is obviously Sakir. They've talked about this as a big horse, big player. Ran a brilliant race at 2000 Guineas, clearly didn't stay. We'll have more to do here, but maybe one to add to Little Big Bear. I think Little Big Bear is clearly the one to beat, and I'll be looking over Sakir, Shaquille, and Al Dassim at the moment will be top of my shortlist. But you don't want to be going too much into sprints because we don't know draw biases. You don't know who's going to be confirmed where and what's going to happen. Coronation Stakes, again, let's try and keep this as simple as possible. Obviously, it could be. I don't know who's going to turn up. Like Electric Eyes could turn up, but we haven't seen her all season. She'd be a player if she does. Jana Rose has entered in the over in the French Oaks, so she's probably not going to be coming over here. Queen for You was beaten recently, but ran a brilliant race, but just looks a level below these. Meditate will run her race, and if the front two aren't on their game, she could pounce. But obviously, clearly on paper, it's between Morge and Tahira. And for me, I think it's Tahira all day. Like she was obviously 6-4 non-runner, no bet. I just think I was very fortunate because obviously I put Morge up for the Irish 1000 Guineas. I backed her myself at 20-1, and I put her up. I think she went off about 9-1, but it was about 12-1. She was my smallest bet of the three, in fairness. I don't want to stand here and tell you she was a certainty because that wasn't what I thought. She improved for Meydan. She already had the 8 furlong form in the book, good ground and the whole works. And she came here and she was incredibly impressive when beating Tahira. The front two pulled miles clear. Let's have a quick back, 8 lengths clear. And in fourth was Caernarfon, who obviously has finished third in the Oaks. Meditate's finished second in the Irish 1000 Guineas. Olivia Moralda bolted up the other day. So the form in behind is all fairly strong, and it just points towards the front two in the market. Morge ran a brilliant race at Royal Ascot last year. If I remember rightly, I'll just click this one. I think she finished second. Yeah, second to Meditate when very inexperienced. So you could have reason to believe that maybe Meditate could improve to Morge's level, but don't know. Morge has looked an improved horse for the 1 mile trip. But Tahira I don't think Tahira, I know a lot of people praised the ride on Tahira by Chris Hayes in the Irish 1000 Guineas. I didn't think that was a good ride at all. I think he got very lucky in the fact that if the O'Brien horse, I think is it Dower House, the 100-1 shot, if Wayne Lawden had more horse underneath him, he would have kept Tahira in. And then it would have made it very difficult if Ryan Moore had paced himself or meditated at the front. It would have made it very difficult for him to be able to stuck there with one horse in front and one to the left. But unfortunately, he just didn't have a good enough horse. If they put a better second horse in there, like say a Meditate and then someone about £10 lower, but they just put a horse that really wasn't good enough to keep her in. I know you could argue, oh, Tahira like was that good that she got out, but I don't think that's the case. Like Tahira was that good. She has got that turn of foot, but if you don't get given the gap, it doesn't matter. That horse that was trying to keep her in wasn't in it to win the race. It was in there to keep Tahira in that pocket. And if you'd used a better pacemaker or a better second horse, they would have kept her in and long enough that, and then ran no race for the last 2 furlongs. It would have been no issue. I still think Tahira probably would have won regardless, but my point was just you don't want to be getting your hostage to fortune. Proven on the good ground now, so it wouldn't surprise me if they get the good ground at Royal Ascot again, and I think she takes the beating. She's even money now, wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if Morge is definitely going to go. Connections have said they are, and everything about it says they are. Wouldn't surprise me if they have a big ding-dong all the way up the battle. Morge has obviously got the form at Ascot, but Tahira's now got the numbers and is obviously progressing, and I just think she just looks out of the top drawer, and it wouldn't surprise me if she goes off odds on maybe 4-6 and Morge maybe like 5-2 or something like that. And then some people will be saying, well, Morge is clearly the bet. That may well be the case, but I just think Tahira's come on for that run and she just looks like she's got a serious turn of foot. King Edward Stakes is a no-go, so let's have a quick look. Final day. Apologies. Right, final day, Platinum Jubilee. One in this for me so far, and that's Artorias. Artorias is going to be ridden by James McDonald, apparently, according to Nick Luck, has got on the plane and will be coming over. Anyone who followed last year will know that we were on the Nature Strip and Artorias double, which was a massive price for both the 2 sprints, 5 and 6 furlongs. Obviously, Nature Strip won easily, and Artorias was given an awful ride to finish 3rd. The issue is with Artorias is always going to be subject to those sort of rides. Let me try and get this form up. Artorias is always going to be subject to those sort of rides just because of the type of run style it's got. Last year was ridden by Jamie Spencer. The problem is with Artorias is he's got a massive turn of foot at the end of the race when everyone else is pretty much, oh, we're done, and just finds another gear. But the 3rd is that's no mean feat anyway, beaten by the 2 Godolphin runners, Naval Crown and Creative Force, who came up the outsides on both sides. Artorias just couldn't get a run. It'll be a horse, for me, in my opinion, everything will be off the bridle and they'll be going forwards. Artorias will be bobbing and weaving in behind, and you just hope that it can get that gap. If you get the gap and get through it, difference is this year is Artorias actually comes in here with strong form. Like as in, when I say strong form, last time out was only 4th, but was over the 7 furlong. Like Australians run their sprinters over all sorts of different trips. But prior to that, had won the Canterbury Stakes, which is a Group 1, and taking the scalp of some big Australian sprinters in Imperatis, who was flying at the time. And again, it just came down to getting a gap, and got the gap, and that was a career best. So then finished again staying on 4th behind Animo over 7.5 furlongs. But again, dropping back to 6 furlongs, plenty in favour. But the only thing is, obviously, it's just me personally, because obviously we're anti-post. But if you can wait until you get the each way places, you'll get 4 or 5 places in this race. It looks like it should be an each way bet to nothing, especially with James McDonald, the master in the saddle. Again, Highfield Princess may not runs. That's 8-1. Art Power, York. Yes. Ascot, not so sure. Rohan, I love as a horse. Obviously, we were on him last year when he won 25-1 in the handicap, but he's a tricky ride. If he's booked up with someone like Ryan Moore in the saddle, then okay, maybe he comes a consideration, but I wouldn't want someone who doesn't know him. Wellington's very interesting. There's been from 16-1 backed into 10s, 9s, 8s, 6s. Often seen in the likes of Shatin, ridden by Ryan Moore normally, and could be a big player in this. So, but for me at the moment, Artorias is the one that you want to back. Still 5-1. You can get 5-1 with Coral each way and Ladbrokes each way. Or if you want to do Win. I've done Win just because it's anti-post currently, but I will look to probably put an each way bet on it. So that's my Royal Ascot preview. I may not have told you anything you don't already know. The more videos I do down the line, I'm going to do more videos, obviously, than written content, because as I said, you just can't operate like the jumps because I don't know who's running where. So I'm only going to have 48 hours at a time. So, but I will come back next week with one which hopefully will have more clue of who's going where and a bit more information. Hopefully we've backed a few winners at the start of the video. If not, it is what it is. It's one of those. Hopefully we'll get a few winners at Royal Ascot. So hope everyone's enjoying the weather, and speak to you all soon. Cheers.